be interviewing Sean Thackwray, well-known South African aviation personality. Not only is he a good friend of mine, he's also a team member and a colleague. We've been around the block together, and I now have the opportunity to put him in the hot seat and ask him some maybe inappropriate questions. And let's see if he's prepared to answer them.
Great.
So, the history of Sean Thackwray and how you got to where you are today. That's what we are going to discuss.
Okay. I was born in Potchefstroom, which would already put many people in the picture. My dad was flying there. He was an army pilot. He was too young to join the Air Force. He left school at 16, so he went to the army. And he flew Oysters, they call them taxi pilots. Yeah. And they were flying in Potch, which is where I was born. And so I basically grew up in a military family, but under skies filled with aeroplanes. My early memories are not of Potchefstroom, but of Port Elizabeth. It was Harvards all the time. The sound in the sky was just filled with that beautiful Pratt & Whitney and the prop.
Your dad flew Harvards too?
Yeah.
But he is most well known as a chopper pilot.
Yeah. My dad flew, as I said, Oysters. He flew Dornier 27s, Harvards, and he instructed for a long time on that. And then he flew Impalas when 6th Squadron in PE was re-equipped with imps. And then an opportunity came for him to get promotion, but it meant a demotion in our world. He had to learn to fly. Yeah, he had to learn to fly helicopters. So he went off and he did his allo conversion, and then he was promoted to Squadron OC of 16 Squadron in Port Elizabeth. Everybody had family that was in the Defence Force. Conscription ensured that, and so we were used to people going to the border.
Yeah. As a kid, you also spent a bit of time in Germany, I believe.
Yeah. My dad was the Air Force attaché in Germany. It was nice. We went to an American school. My sister and I, we changed. You know, you get a totally different exposure. We were so insular in South Africa at the time. The sanctions and all of those kind of things did work. We were cut off. And so the whole family changed. We came back from Germany much the better for it.
And then at what point did you decide, okay, I'm gonna go into the military?
I always loved aeroplanes, and I drew them and built model aeroplanes from when I was a real lighty. In my matric year, I finally decided absolutely for certain I'm going to fly. And I was lucky there was a defense flying club at the time, and I went and learned to fly with an instructor, a guy called Pip Pidsley. I arrived there one day in a t-shirt like I am here today, and he said, no, when you come fly with me, you'll dress up properly. And I had to wear a collared shirt and a tie.
Okay.
And so it was more of a life lesson, but he eventually sent me solo, which was lovely.
You're also very well known for your art, drawing, painting, and you've managed to balance them, and it has been quite a difficult balancing act, I should imagine.
My mother is an art teacher, and she allowed me the freedom to start working with oil paint really young.
Why is that something that is traditionally
normally something that you do later? And there was a lovely German Air Force guy that my dad had met through the attachés in Germany who visited our house, and he saw some of my paintings. And he was the first guy ever to commission me. When I was 12 years old, he commissioned me to do 2 paintings for him. One of a Stuka and one of fishing houses in Arniston. I have considered full-time art, but the problem is that the flying is just so... I'd love to have it always in balance.
Yeah.
Flying and art. So whatever it takes now, I'm going to keep flying, I'm going to keep painting and drawing, and we'll see where it goes.
Your dad gave you a little bit of instruction too?
Yes.
That must have been pretty tough.
Yes, you would know.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a dad giving you instruction.
As well-known dads.
Yes.
Both our fathers. My dad taught me to fly from word go, which was very difficult for him, also very difficult for me. I'm now teaching Ethan, my son, and it is very, very, very stressful.
There was, I first did a year of national service in the Air Force.
Yeah. Oh, okay,
And
so you did
yeah, I
your
did
national-
national service for 1 year.
Yeah.
But I had failed the maths test in my
Okay.
my first attempt at getting into pilot's course.
Okay.
I wasn't very good at maths. I'm better at drawing and sharpening pencils.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in that year, I went up to visit my dad, and he'd arranged to fly a Maul rocket up at Rundu, the Maul M5. And that was my first tail drag experience, and he bravely decided he would teach me how to fly it. Oh boy. It's amazing. With Pip Pidsley, who was, as I say, a World War II veteran, he wasn't nearly as demanding as my dad. And then I was lucky I went to 8th Squadron. I flew Impalas, 4 years there. Unfortunately, I never did instructor's course. I think in many ways that would have rounded everything off very nicely, but
Yeah.
they needed pilots at the squadron at the time.
After the Air Force, what's next?
I leave the SAF, having come to the end of my term, and I figured, well, I'm not going to hang around here forever. And the political changes were happening, and it was looking fantastic. South Africa was really sort of like opening up, but then there was no work. I ended up flying a Cessna 210 for my now wife, my then girlfriend's company, Group Africa. And my dad had been flying to Korea trying to sell Royfalk.
Okay.
To the South Koreans, I should point out. Anyway, so my dad met an old friend on a Cathay Pacific flight who said, South Africans are now welcome in Cathay Pacific. So I applied and got in, and I had 2 lovely years there. But something about being African, it's just in your blood.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, I'd had enough, and I decided to come back. And that was when the SAA story started. It was amazing. Actually, your dad was on the interview panel.
Yeah, yeah.
Him and Doc Milan. And it was amazing because your dad was quite skeptical. He still said, why on earth would you come from Cathay? You've just started a career in Hong Kong. I mean, the world's your oyster.
Arguably one of the
Yeah,
best
the top
airlines
airline
of the world.
of the time.